This film deserves the respect that it has. It's the first Spider-Man film, the first theatrically released Spider-Man film, and set the stage for how Spider-Man's portrayed in any type of media, really. This film is kind of written off as like the goofy Spider-Man film, and trust me, it does have a lot of kind of unintentionally comedic moments. But still, this is a very classic comic book 1950s feeling universe. That's exactly what Sam Raimi was trying to go for. He wanted to base his Spider-Man off the classic Spider-Man comics that he read growing up. The performances are the performances are great from Willem Dafoe, Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst. James Franco is almost unrecognizable from what he does in the future. A lot of the Spider-Man tropes start here, with the film ending on him swinging to him having costumes that no 17-year-old should have the money or talent to make. The villain's always dying at the end. But all of that started here, and because of that, it's not really a trope until it gets to future movies like Spider-Man 3, or some of this stuff actually carries over into the Amazing Spider-Man series. Willem Dafoe is having the time of his life playing Green Goblin. Honestly, him wearing the mask and the suit and stuff kind of does a disservice to his performance, because he is way more threatening outside of the costume than he is inside the costume. Also, this portrayal of Spider-Man, I think Tobey Maguire does a really good job of being a very, very awkward, socially awkward, Peter Parker. But him as Spider-Man has always kind of, it doesn't click with me. My Spider-Man's always a lot more witty, jokey, off the cuff, and I just don't really see that coming out of this Spider-Man. He's a lot more like stereotypic, eat your green vegetables, jolly ho, let's save the day superhero type of superhero than kind of like wisecracking acrobat who... Aunt May and Uncle Ben work really well in this too. I mean, Aunt May is just kind of there for Peter to worry about, and Uncle Ben is there to just, kind of die. That scene in the car just really illustrates his entire purpose. He might as well just said, "With great power comes great responsibility." I understand, Uncle Ben. You know I have to die, right? Wait, what? Can you come up with things on the fly? Years down the line, when all these Spider-Man films have gone and said their piece, this one will definitely be remembered. This film was probably a very difficult film to make. It's the first Spider-Man film in the MCU, so this kind of sets the stage for how Spider-Man, Civil War had already said how he was going to be portrayed in this universe, but this said what a Spider-Man film was going to look like in this universe. And we have a Spider-Man with a more comedic tone, focusing more on him as a high schooler dealing with his issues, which is what I really love about Spider-Man, when we can see him juggling his personal life and his hero life. The Vulture is probably the best Spider-Man film that has been, the Vulture is probably the best Spider-Man villain that has been portrayed on film since the Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus. He's just so grounded. His motivations make sense. I like the fact that Tony Stark's his actions trying to help people indirectly affects this guy, and he has no idea that that's what's happening, because he's on such a different level in terms of societal norms and his financial resources, that he just doesn't understand that he's affecting the little guy with every decision that he makes, and that drives Vulture to go to crime. Also, people really have an issue with Tony Stark's role in the film. They think it's too much about Tony Stark. The villain's motivated by Tony Stark. The story has him in it a lot. But I think it makes a lot of sense to have Tony in there as a mentor figure. Peter Parker's a young kid, and in a world where superheroes actually exist and you're becoming a superhero, you would want to live up to them and their example and try to prove yourself, which is exactly what Peter is trying to do in this film. So I appreciated that. Also, I think that even though Tony Stark is in the film more than you would probably want or expect, he's still used sparingly. Like, he's only in the film when it's necessary for him to be in the film, so I don't think he takes it over. This film is like impossible. I never thought anything like this would have ever come out. And when I heard that an animated film about Miles Morales was coming out, I honestly thought that it was either going to be decent or mediocre. And then with the whole Spider-Verse thing added onto it, my hopes for it went down, because I just don't like multiverse stuff, time travel stuff. Sometimes it's done well, but when it's a gimmick, it kind of takes me out of it. But Into the Spider-Verse uses the multiverse and the other Spider-Man as a really cool way to create this whole motif. That the reason why people love Spider-Man is that he represents the average person. Any person could be Spider-Man if they just have their heart in the right place and have a sense of responsibility. And this film proves it by literally having several people who are all Spider-Man, who all hold that identity, coming together and working for a greater cause. And Miles Morales being at the center of it, it's his origin, seeing other people who have achieved the thing that he wants to achieve, and then he needs to learn that he doesn't have to be them exactly, that he just has to be himself and try his best to be as creative as he can. And really, being Spider-Man is just staying true to yourself. And I think that's a really good lesson. The voice acting's great. The animation is absolutely beautiful. It's this cool mix between comic book style artwork with this really unique animation, and it's like 3D and 2D all mixed together. It's incredible. Like, the group of minds that came together to make this work is really astounding. The whole thing with the whole thing with Kingpin is kind of just a catalyst, the whole thing with Kingpin is just a catalyst to get the story going. It's not really compelling. Kingpin lost his family, and so now he's trying to pull another version of his family from the multiverse. That, okay, if that's what you want your story to be, fine. That's not really the important part, so it doesn't really affect the viewing experience of that film. And then the Kingpin thickness memes. Ooh boy, the thickness memes. Ooh boy. Look, I'm going to say this right now. I am super biased. I grew up with the widescreen edition and the full screen edition of Spider-Man 2. I've watched all of these special features and deleted scenes probably like 3 times over. And I just love this film. It is exactly what it embodies Spider-Man to me. What Spider-Man is to me is just a kid or a person who has this sense of responsibility, trying to find a way to pursue that and keep that, like, to be responsible, to do what he needs to do, but also try to take care of everything else that is in his life, and how hard that can be for a person to do. That's literally what Spider-Man 2 is. When I was watching this with my friends, we just loved and kind of reveled in how much Peter's life is so crappy. And it's not because of anything that he's doing wrong, or directly, but it's more so his need to be Spider-Man is affecting everything else around him. And he feels stuck. He feels like he's not in control of it all. And then he has to lose his powers because he's losing his confidence, and go back to basics and rebuild himself from the ground up to understand why he's Spider-Man in the first place, to understand his relationship with his peers and his life that he wants to live, in order to realize that being Spider-Man is to protect all of that, to defend all of that. And that's really the lesson of that film. Dr. Octopus is really, really good. It's a pretty good writing for him that is elevated by Alfred Molina's performance. He is the definitive Dr. Octopus for a lot of people, and I completely understand why. Oh, God. Even 18 years later, it still looks great. They also did a lot of legwork to try to make the whole Peter and Mary Jane relationship work more. I still don't know why they're in love with one another, but okay, whatever. The fact is they like each other, and they're having those issues that understandably would exist from Peter not necessarily committing to be with Mary Jane, and then she moves on, and Peter feels a certain way about it. Harry, he's almost reaches that edge of just like going off the deep end, and then he pulls himself back a little bit once he figures out Peter is Spider-Man. That works really well. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson is the best that he's ever been in this film. It's just a really good film. And I am biased, and I'm not gonna say that I'm not, because I completely am. Spider-Man 2 is my favorite, and I consider the best Spider-Man film.